if the missile attacks continue, the Houthi attacks continue, we're going to be a part of defending whether it's ships in the Red Sea or it's Israel itself. Will be involved in those defensive measures. But the issue too is what kind of impact was that going to have on the U.S. military forces? We're already stretched, whether it's dealing with Russia, it's dealing with China. If we're going to be in this defensive posture in the Middle East for months to come, that ties up a lot of U.S. military capability, and I'm not sure how long we're going to be able to be at this level of military involvement in the Middle East.
And first of all, what's your reaction to what President Biden said last night at the White House in what was quite unexpected for him to take those questions from reporters, wasn't it?
Well, it was in the sense that he's been kind of off the public stage for a while, and to have him come upon the microphones and start talking about something that usually we do behind the scenes, that was unusual. But I think he wanted to go public because he wanted to put on record and in front of everyone just where he stood in terms of targeting, and in terms of, I guess, trying to express that he is in touch with Netanyahu. He said he was going to be giving him a call later on, giving a flavor of the kind of advice that he's giving Netanyahu, and the kind of influence he actually does have, and what Netanyahu will actually do with that advice, we'll have to see. But it seemed to me he wanted to set up the public record on what he talks to Netanyahu about, and what he's been saying. He kind of wants the public to know.
Do you think it's an indication of President Biden's frustration with Netanyahu?
I think it is. I really do. I think that's a good way to put it. It's been embarrassing in a lot of ways, in the sense that the U.S. used to have influence in Tel Aviv. There used to be a relationship with Israeli leaders where they looked to the United States for guidance, for advice, and now obviously that's just not where Netanyahu is. And I think for Biden, he hasn't been real public on this, and now he wants to show the public, look, I'm engaged in this. I'm giving this guy advice here. And you need to know that we're not just sitting back and watching this unfold and watching this happen in terms of Lebanon or Gaza itself. This is what I've been doing behind the scenes. And this is important stuff, and you need to know where I stand.
Why do you think the relationship is where it is now? Because it's just fascinating that you kept saying there, the US used to have influence. Everything was in the past tense. And is that because Biden is coming to the end of his term in office? Or is it because he's a Democrat president? And actually, if you look back to when Donald Trump was president, Netanyahu had quite a friendly relationship with him. And is he maybe Netanyahu hoping that Donald Trump will get back into the White House and then there could be a completely different relationship come January?
Well, I think he for sure, Netanyahu wants to see Trump back in. They did have a cozy relationship. Netanyahu doesn't want to have an American president who throws rocks at him or disagrees with what he's doing. But I think, to me, the overriding concern of Netanyahu is that he wants to do what he wants to do, whoever the American president is, whether it's Biden or anyone else. He feels right now that he is walking with destiny, if you will. This is his opportunity. This is Israel's opportunity to press ahead and do great damage to those who have been attacking Israel for many years. Hezbollah shelling, firing rockets into the settlements in northern Israel, what Hamas did. This is for Netanyahu personally. This is his opportunity to go in there at a time when Iran seems to be on their back foot. The Iran isn't doing these things in retaliation that are hurting Israel at all. Netanyahu is calling Iran's bluff in a lot of ways. And so for an American president to give Netanyahu advice on going easy on these guys, or this type of thing. He's not listening to it. This is his time, Netanyahu, and this is something that he's not going to let an American president stand in his way. So I don't think it's so much Biden himself. Biden as a Democrat, Biden at the end of his administration. I think right now this is all Netanyahu, and no one's going to get in his way.
Of course, and this may be a naive question from someone in the UK, but if President Biden was really unhappy with Netanyahu's approach to the situation in the Middle East at the moment, the US could withhold weapons from Israel, could say, actually, this isn't what we're going to do. Is that unthinkable?
No, I don't think it's unthinkable. And the reason I say that is we had a pause a couple of months ago in the delivery of some weapons. So I think we fired a shot across his bow, if you will. The United States did that with Netanyahu. And I think should Netanyahu go in a direction like maybe attacking Iran's nuclear capability, doing something that really escalates into a dangerous way, hitting strategic targets, something that's having a global impact, something that makes the U.S. look really bad in terms of being associated with that, then yeah, I think the U.S. could go further and begin to deny weapons. But, I think in an election year in the United States, that's something that would certainly be felt at the polls, where some Jewish American voters would sit there and go, I can't believe you're doing this to hurt to hurt our Israel. You, Biden, you've been such a strong supporter. American presidents in the past have been such strong supporters for Israel. How dare you? How could you do this? This is going to impact my vote, that kind of thing. So that's a bit of a deterrent. But at the same time, I think there are Arab American voters. There's young voters who are appalled at what's happened in Gaza. So, the impact on our elections is going to be felt at a time like this. So if he were to take such an action of holding back weapons and this type of thing, something truly extreme would have to be done out of Tel Aviv. I don't think we've seen that yet, but we could. And I think that would be the dilemma Biden's going to have to face then, is actually doing something on the one hand, and doing it at a time when it's very impactful with the U.S. elections.
Is there a concern in the US that the country could be dragged into a regional war with Iran? I mean, I was reading overnight that the US was involved in airstrikes against Houthis in Yemen.
Right. Yes, I read that too. I just cannot see a situation where the U.S. would get pulled into a ground war in the Middle East. That's for sure. In other words, working side by side with Israeli ground forces in Lebanon, something like that, some kind of U.S. taking part in an offensive operation by Israel. You will not see that. The U.S. support for Israel is primarily to defend them. It's to help defend them, like we have seen the U.S. do in knocking down those missiles twice now that have gone from Iran into Israel. So we've seen an example of that, and the type of deployments that we've made into the Middle East really are oriented towards that kind of thing. It's missile defense, it's air defense, it's that. It's not ground forces. And frankly, a lot of the forces that are there are to protect U.S. forces already in Iraq or in Syria, in bases that we've had there as we're fighting ISIS. There's a need to be able to protect those American forces who might be vulnerable to an attack by Iranian proxies, in terms of retaliation. So, but in terms of a feeling that we're going to get sucked into a wider regional war in the Middle East that involves ground forces, that involves something like we've never seen before, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think that if the missile attacks continue, the Houthi attacks continue, we're going to be part of defending, whether it's ships in the Red Sea or it's Israel itself, will be involved in those defensive measures. But the issue too is, what kind of impact was that going to have on the U.S. military forces? We're already stretched, whether it's dealing with Russia, it's dealing with China. If we're going to be in this defensive posture in the Middle East for months to come, that ties up a lot of U.S. military capability, and I'm not sure how long we're going to be able to be at this level of military involvement in the Middle East.